Hello, my Bookhos. It is summertime, and as much as I want to get into other DIYs around embroidery and some lace making, I think it's time for a very frivolous scrap project. Did you hear that, scrap monster? This one's for you! Hello and welcome to Book Hoarding by Bianca. I'm Bianca, and today I am going to show you how to make this cute little seashell sewing kit. Now, this is one of those chaotic craft days. We are not going to be measuring a ton of things. We're just going to be using hot glue and scraps. Let us take a turn about my sewing kit. So I have these little extra frogs that I had from sewing projects that I glued onto the edges, and then you open it up and there's wool scraps in here that I used to make little joiner and then little pockets. Ooh, ah. Ooh, ah. Now, I have since making this seen some Victorian vintage purses that have little accordion stuff along the sides and then supports like a little pocket. Maybe I'll do that one day, but not today. I shan't. I shall just stick with this as is because, like, let's face it, this is not something that we're like, this is my intense embroidery kit that I'm bringing everywhere. No, this is a silly cute little, like, I'm throwing this in my bag on summer vacation. It's because it's cute. It's cute. This is for the cute. We're doing this for the cute. Okay, now that we're all on the same page about the fact that we're just doing this for the aesthetic and for the cuteness, because that's what we're doing, I want to talk about the couple of like internet things that I saw that helped inspire this. First and foremost, I see on Pinterest all the time screen caps that are from essentially the same two things. One is this Berta style blog post that is all about a fabric seashell inspired sewing kit, and I will link to this in my description so that if you want to make a real probably more useful one, there you go. And then the other thing that I saw was these screenshots from this Victorian toy makers book along with the Victorian extant versions of these. So these are Victorian tutorials from a toy making kids toy book, and I've also seen the real ones, which they're mostly, I see the pincushion one where you put the shell pieces together and you make a pincushion, and you'll see in the video why that makes a lot of sense, because when you actually push the bottom together, there creates a little gap up here because it's not just like a flat flush thing. It's a natural thing that has room for a thing to be in it. You'll see as I do this why that would make sense. So if you want to make a pincushion, seems really simple. It seems like very similar hot glue everything together and stuff it full of stuff situation, or you can make a matching one to this. But those were a thing. I will include the examples of the extant stuff linkage in my description if you want to check them out more. But these are things that were done because why not? So anyway, you'll have a couple of examples of other takes on this, but I had seen the Berta style one and I was like, oh yes, I want to make a sewing kit out of this. I don't want to just make a pincushion. And then when I deep dived into this, because I don't just do historical images and not give context to it, I was like, oh, this is from a Victorian toy book that actually includes a needle book from seashells that, like, I never have actually seen floating on Pinterest. So that was fun and interesting. Before we get into the DIY, I will tell you the things that I used for this, my materials section, if you will. First and foremost, you need to find shells. I found these at a thrift store. Like, I found these just like in a bag, maybe like 6-7 of them, big chunky boys in a bag at a thrift store for like $3. Like, it was very, very cheap. I honestly suggest doing the same. It's summertime. A lot of thrift stores save their seasonal stuff for this time of year. I'd say check it out. If you're like me and live in a super touristy area, tourists are constantly buying tchotchkes they don't take home. So that's a cool thing. If you are going to the coast over the summer, you don't have kind of local to you shells to look for, you can also check that out. It could be a cute way, like, to remember your vacation. Obviously, if you're going to natural places, don't like disturb the ecosystem. Like, I'm talking about, like, if you see people being like, here's a shell that you can just buy, sure, like little tourist stop things, or seaside things. Please don't like take things from ecosystems or kill things that are trying to exist. Just safely find just like shells that exist that you can use for crafty times, okay? Can we all agree not to just go destroy ecosystems? Cool, thank you. besides your ethically sourced shells, you will need little closures of some kind. I just used little like frogs that I had, little like cording things. If you have other things that kind of work in the same way, that could be fine. You can also do ribbons. Like, I think ribbons would work great. This is really very much about using what you have. Like, you could use like, I don't know, you could use like buttons and buttonholes and stuff, and like creatively attach them, like keep them on the fabric and then hot glue the edges there, like have a little belt go around it or something, like a little clasp closure, whatever you have. Like, honestly, this is about what you have. It's a scrap project. For the insides, I use scrap wool that is actually left over from my arts and druidcraft wool that I use from my little short Spencer. So I literally just pull a bunch of wool scraps. I wanted it to be a little hardier fabric than just cotton, because I did want to have space for me to roll up to make this little spacer / pin cushion, needle cushion. So I'd say just use the sturdy fabric, and you'll need hot glue. You could probably use other glues. Remember, when you use glue though, please work in a ventilated area, well ventilated. You don't want to just be inhaling those fumes. That's really bad. But that's pretty much all you need, along with some sewing supplies to put into it eventually. But yeah, closure, shells, scraps for the guts. All right, well, I think that's about it on the supply list. So let's get into the good stuff. Let's make it sew. All right, so you're gonna grab your shells and your scrap, and you're just gonna get an idea of where things are gonna line up. So I'm just putting fabric on top of the shell and getting just a general idea of where, like, the most part of that scrap's gonna work. And then I'm taking my scissors, I'm gonna trim this to be the size that I want to be. So right now I'm just worrying about covering the kind of insides of the shells, and then I'll be using scrap to do more, like adding little pockets and everything. This is not a very precise thing. Like, you can do something where you trace on paper and make a pattern, but since it's a very specific concave, shape, I just didn't want to mess with that. So I just literally put it in my shell and cut around it. And make sure that when you're using your fabric, you tuck it into the places that are going to be curved, so that it just, takes up space. So, like, it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough for my needs. So you're just going to do that twice, and you're going to hot glue gun these in. Since the shells that I have are very, very similar in shape and size, I just cut out a second one of these to make do for what I needed. And then I did pop it into the other shell just to make sure that it did, fit okay. That it did seem to fit similarly and well. And yeah, then you're good to go on the next step, which is adding a scrap for the join. So there are a ton of ways you probably could do this, but because there was a gap there, if I lined up the curved part of the shell, and I didn't want there to be a gap at the top part of the curve, even though it's like how the pin cushion DIY works, I decided to roll up this little piece of wool. And basically, I would use the little rolled up pieces as volume when it's closed, and then it would kind of fill in that gap naturally. And then it would also serve as a kind of dual purpose, as like a kind of pin cushion needle book situation, because it was so many layers of wool and just puffy and right there. So that's what I did. I basically took that. I always fold things to get the halfway mark, because sometimes it's just easier to do that, especially with such a small piece. And then I got my trusty hot glue gun out, and then I had to wait a second for it to actually heat up, because I hadn't actually put it on the thing yet. So I just fold that back after I've aligned the center, and just put some hot glue down. And obviously the center is going to be a little off, because we already know there's a gap between the flat side of the shell when the curved side is lined up. So you want to have the center be off and kind of hanging in the air a little bit. So the actual glued part will be adjacent to the center, but not the exact center. And then I'm just going to fill in some of the gaps there. But yeah, I'm hot gluing this. That's what we're doing. We're embracing a day of chaotic crafting where we are just going with the flow. And, you know, you can flip the fabric back and forth to make sure you get all the gaps. And then while that is there, I'm getting an idea, again, like laying that on top to make sure where that's going to hit that shell before I glue it down. It's pretty easy to just kind of go with the flow on this one. So I've put that where it needs to go, and then I'm going to get the hot glue and glue it down while trying not to dislodge the shells. So these things spin super easily on my desktop. So an FYI to folks who are doing this on a very slick surface, that you too might have to deal with shells going spinning after you've lined them up very carefully to do something. But you can see here I have just hot glued that down, just pressing it in to make sure it gets all over the fabric and the fibers. And then I close it up. You can see there's still a gap because I haven't rolled up my stuff yet. And the hot glue, obviously be very careful when you work with it because it's hot, like very hot. There are a couple times in here, if you're watching, that you will see that I definitely burn my fingies. But when it's cool enough to work with, you can roll up then the rest of your little loopy loops that you made. And then I'm going to show here the kind of concept, which is after they're hot glued in place, they're going to fill in that gap so that the kit can close easily. So I have those rolled up where I want them to be, and then I just put a little hot glue and roll over and press down carefully. And then I realize that I put my hot glue gun over my arm, so it's hard to do things. You get the picture. Just hot glue stuff down, hope for the best. I think it turned out okay, considering that I was just making it up as I go. So yeah, you're just going to press down and not get your finger in hot glue, right? That's the goal. No fingies in hot glue. And then once it's dry, you can see here, closed up. It's going to be good to go. There's that spin. Okay, so then it's time to add your actual like insert pieces, as I'll call them. And the reason that I liked these to just put like a wool lining in these was twofold. Like I just wanted to have a simple base fabric on the shells and not just have like pins or anything scraping the shell. I didn't want my supplies basically just hitting something very hard, because I think most of us know that a lot of sewing supplies actually are quite delicate. So I wanted to have that in place. So and I also thought it would be easier to add little attachments on top of wool. Oh, you can see I got hot glue on my fingy there. Anyway, so I did the little hinge area, if you will, and then I started by hot gluing the curve in place, since I already pre-cut that to be exact. And then I put a little hot glue around the edges and the basin, and then you're just pressing down from the top down to that seam, to the hinge, to try to get that as flat as possible. Like obviously it's not going to be flush, but I did find the wool pretty forgiving for the small of a little concave thing, because I mean, we're working with small enough scrap fabric. It's not going to create a huge amount of excess fabric. And there was, I don't know, I feel like wool is a really forgiving fiber in terms of curves and everything. But yeah, you start at the edge, you gently, carefully press it down. You could probably use a tool to do that instead of your fingers so you don't burn yourself. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that these had a base of wool, and I think it works out okay. I thought the wool was also a good one in terms of scrap fabric, because like you can use cotton, but I liked that wool was like it was fluffy. It gave it a little bit more body. It felt a little bit more secure. And like you could probably use craft felt for this as well, to be honest. But and also, oh, gotta replace my glue stick. Running out of glue. But yeah, I say just like have fun with this, go with the flow. I felt like the thicker fabric was obviously too a lot better for that hinge situation that I'm trying to build. That eventually becomes a glorified pincushion situation. Okay, so we're moving on to the fun part. As I sip some tea. I just got some scraps and folded them around and cut them so they were nice and even. There's some logic to them, and glued them down. So I have just this general loop situation. Like on nice professional tool kits and everything, you'll have these that are precise. Oh no, glue on my fingy, glue on my fingy. You'll have these that are just very precisely done so you can like slip things in them. But because we're working on a curve, I didn't want to do that because then things would kind of get stuck. Once again, glue my fingy. So I thought if I just put a general kind of loop in here that I could just put thread or scissors under to kind of secure them, that would work just fine for my purposes. And you can obviously do these to whatever shapes that you have. And so then this is literally how I'm measuring. I'm going, what will fit in this space? And knowing that I wanted to curve down 3 of the sides as well. And thinking this being a little pocket. So I'm just going to finger press that and take it to the iron and then take it to the sewing machine. And there you go. Look, that's all it took. I just folded the edges. I had to cut off some threads. But like, that's it. I just eyeballed it. I just put it on the thing and said, I want a little bit of a seam allowance, and then we're going to go with it. You can obviously, like if you really want to, you can pre-measure the inside of your shell and then like sew the pockets onto that base liner piece that you're doing. I didn't do that because we were just enjoying ourselves and going with the flow. So I put a layer of glue down and put the right side down of the pocket. So then it's going to curve upward, if that makes sense. So it's giving it a little bit of body and closes the bottom of that pocket. That's just one way to do it. You can do it however you want. You can glue it all down, wrong side to liner, whatever works. I felt like the wool was pretty forgiving in terms of like me folding it over after it had dried on the hot glue so that it would make this little pocket. And obviously it's not going to be a massive pocket because like we're trying to fit stuff into a seashell. It's not going to hold much, friends. But as soon as you're done with kind of your little internal bits, then you're pretty done with that. I mean, at least I was. You know, I feel like this is not enough space to make a ton of little tiny pockets and everything. So what then you do is you're going to move on to the closure. So I had these little like 25-cent cord frogs that I'd gotten when I was in LA Fabric District. There's like a notion shop. These are not expensive. You can find them at, I think, most places that have notions. This is just one way to do this, but what I'm doing is going to be gluing them down, gluing one side, you know, on one side, just making sure that you don't accidentally glue like the other side of the closure down so that it's perma-closed. That would be bad. But I just put like a dot of glue and put like the, which I really should be using something else to do because there's holes in this little cord closure, right? There's spacing because it looks cool, but that means that the hot glue comes between there and I get my fingers in the hot glue. And this is not the safest way to do this. This is not the safest way to do this. I'm going to tell you that now. But once that's dry, you can look at the other side and that's where it's going to go. It's going to just close like that. You don't want to pull those super tight because you still need just enough, not ease, but you need just enough space that you can pull that knot in and out. So one of mine is perfectly spaced and the other one of mine is a little too tightly spaced. So it's just a little bit of a struggle to get it open and closed, but that means I guess it's secure. So that's not a terrible thing. Oh, so sleepy. So yeah, you just wait for it to dry and then you move on to the next one. So I did 2. I would say that, you know, if you use ribbon, you could use like a leather thing. Like there are definitely ways that you could do this where you're not having to use these in this formation. This was just one way to do it. This is embracing the chaos of whatever is in your sewing drawer and that works for you. I happen to have a couple of these little frogs left over that worked perfectly for this. They're not even the same shape and size, even though I grabbed them from the same bin. As you can see, like the one that I just glued is like a little bit smaller than this one, so it's kind of funny. But just like work with what you have and have fun with it. And the whole purpose of this one is just to keep it closed securely. So yeah, so I'm not overthinking it too much. and then you have your little kit and you can fill it up. So I had a bunch of these little basic sewing kit supplies that are like not my like very fancy threads, but are just sewing kits that I had that are, you know, they're literally cardboard spools, and that's fine because I don't think this is going to be used for big fancy things. But I put a couple extra little pins in here and some needles. And yeah, it's, you know, it's not made for an intense sewing day. It's just a cute little sewing kit that is 100% for the aesthetic. And, you know, there's enough space for a thimble and seam ripper, scissors, which I eventually put in the little thread loop to secure them. I think you can see there that it all closes up. When I shake it, you can see the scissors want to slowly pop out, but they're little craft scissors. They'll be fine. Oh, hello. Nice of you to join the scrap revolution. Now, who is this? Oh. Oh, are you made of scraps? Yes. I'm very proud to initiate you into the scrap union. Your union card is in the mail, and I will accept your dues in the form of other scraps. Thank you. This shall be my summer of scrap. Now again, in hindsight, I definitely want to add the little accordion inside thing that like adds space to it and covers up the open edges. But for now, I think this is fine. Like I don't envision using this as more than just, it's in my cute little bag for summer vacation stuff. Like it's not really going to be my intense, I'm taking this to a sewing class situation. Maybe I'll have it on me like when I go to like in-person classes or something, or like I don't need my full kit, but I just, in case I need it on hand to be cutesy. I think it's adorable. I also think like you could easily make like a very simple clutch if you do add the stuff on the side to keep everything inside. It could be a cute little clutch bag if you want, especially if you get really chunky shells. So yeah, I really dug just sitting down one day and being like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna sit down and make a craft, which is my favorite kind of craft day, to be honest. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, patrons. Like you are the whole reason that I keep making these videos, and your support means the world to me. Like it means so much that you've supported me on this journey, and that you are down for this chaos. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Please do check out the links in my profile if you want to see more cool, fun, crafty times, if you want to check out free patterns I have, and other little bloggity things and patterns. Thank you so much for joining me, and don't forget to make it so. Besides your ethically sourced seashells that you found by the seashore, if they were sold to you by somebody.